Welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona Costantini, blogger, storyteller, and life enthusiast. Each week, I will bring you an idea, guest, or positive thought to help inspire you to create happiness and live on purpose. We decide the stories we tell ourselves and where we choose to invest our energy. It's time to cultivate a positive mind for a positive, more meaningful life. I'm so grateful you popped in. Now let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Happiness Happens podcast. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode. I am so excited to be here with you today. I've literally just wrapped up recording an episode for the Motivational Mentors podcast. So this was my very first podcast interview on someone else's podcast. So I'm so excited for that episode to come out, and I will definitely be sure to share it all over my platforms so you guys can hear it. I hope you find it inspiring, and when you do listen to it, you've got to drop me a line because I want to know. Before recording this podcast on the Motivational Mentors podcast, I had a lot of fear about going on and insecurities and, old ideologies that kind of were coming back up and being like, no, you're not good enough. Like, you can't do this. Like, why would you go on here? No one cares what you have to say. So I really wanted to talk about fear overall today. And I don't know if you remember, but maybe about a month ago now, I did my very first speaking event at an event called Flip the Script. And I wanted to share the video of what I was speaking about with all of you. And I won't lie, I opened up the video and I literally haven't even watched it yet because I don't know why I had so many insecurities and so much fear around watching myself and myself speak and perform on this stage, for a lack of better words. So what I want to talk about today, though, and I feel like it's so relevant, especially with recording, the podcast that I just recorded, is fear. And this is the same topic that I spoke about a couple weeks ago when I was doing this event. Fear is such a crazy thing in our lives. Over the last year and a half or so, I've been doing a lot of work on myself. And one of the biggest things that I realized was that fear is at the core of everything that I was doing. And even though that might not always be the case now, it certainly was the case before. And fear is something that I think we all experience, but it isn't something that we all acknowledge or take a second to understand. So before this sort of transitional journey began, and which led me to the launch of my own podcast, I was living in a lot of negativity and a lot of judgment and feelings of unhappiness and never being grateful enough for what I had. And this is a big problem because we have so many wonderful things in our lives, and not realizing how much we have and being grateful for all the stuff we have is such a loss and such a mistake. So a lot of my journey over the last little bit has been finding my purpose, finding my passions, and kind of hybriding them together. So full transparency, last August, I started going to see a therapist, and it was actually really amazing because it started uncovering all these different parts of myself that I didn't realize were holding me back, and I didn't realize where all of these fears were rooted in. From doing that and from seeing a therapist, and I still see her today, it's amazing. I highly recommend it if you need it or if you want it. From there, I decided to go on my very first retreat. And so this retreat was kind of the catalyst for everything good that happened in my life afterwards, because I was able to reflect inwards and understand what it was that was making me so fearful. And ultimately, the fear that I was experiencing was surrounded by the stories that I felt were negative and the stories that I told myself that needed to be changed to positive ones. So fear is a funny thing because, as I was saying, you don't really notice it kind of creep into your life, but it does. And when it does, it's kind of like we don't know what to do with it, and it holds us back from a lot of stuff that we can't necessarily bring ourselves to do, if that makes any sense. So you'll have a really great idea to do X, Y, and Z, or to launch a podcast, let's say, but you have so much fear around it that you're not going to be good enough, and you've told yourself 100 million stories as to why you can't do it. So you've let fear overtake your life and take away a source of happiness for you, or something that you really were looking forward to doing. this was one of the crucial parts that I needed to change. And what I realized was that everything I did was rooted in fear. And it was fear that my family would think that I was stupid for starting all these different things, that my friends would no longer want to be around me, that my loved ones wouldn't understand, that I wouldn't be good enough in the industry that I wanted to work in, and that what I had to share really wasn't that passionate or powerful. These were all of the fears and all the stories that I told myself. And these are a lot of the reasons why I lived my life in so much judgment and negativity, and was unable to pursue a better life for myself because I hindered myself with so many thoughts that really controlled everything that I did. So what I want to get on here today and say, you guys, is this. We will always have fear. Fear is not something that just goes away. When we're fearful of things, it shows in 100 different areas of our lives. The way that we deal with fear is to take fear and acknowledge it and transform it into something good. So you take the fears that you have and you understand what it is about that fear that you're so fearful of, and you change it into something positive. So I started doing this with so many different things in my life, and one of them in particular was the fear of not being good enough. So I would take this fear of not being good enough and kind of break it down. Why do I feel like I'm not good enough to do all of these different things? And how can I take those thoughts and transform them into something positive and doing something good for somebody else? A lot of the time, whenever we're trying to do something or anything at all, we do it for people. Of course, we do it for ourselves in some respect, but when you're helping people, that's when your biggest purpose kind of shines through. So I started looking at different ways to release fear in my life. And one of the things that was most key was that I had to start paying attention to all the small nudges that life was giving me. And this was one of the ways that I really started to release fear, because fear can show up in many different ways. It shows up in what we do or what we don't do, what we say, what we don't say, and how we treat other people. And there's a balance in letting go of fear, because it's not about eliminating the fear completely, but it's about understanding it and consciously choosing not to let that thought consume you. One of the things that I sort of realized once I started letting go of fear was, once you actually do release fear, you start to return to a place of love and to a place of acceptance and to a place of knowing that it's going to be okay. You return to a place of love and compassion and grace for yourself. And, you know, when we're afraid, we're actually pulling back and we're pulling out of life what we really want for ourselves. When we're afraid, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to see all that is great. Releasing fear and letting go of fear is really about making small changes in your daily thinking. You know, it's choosing to be positive and accepting your fears when they show up. And this is how you begin to change your life. So if you have a fear, like I was mentioning before, if you have a fear, it's acknowledging that fear and turning it into a positive anyways. One of the best strategies for this is taking whatever fear you're experiencing and writing out all of the positive outcomes that could happen if you let go of that fear. Once you're able to do that, living in the positivity actually becomes more easy and more authentic and becomes your default response to every time you experience a fear. With fear, it's just about getting over that small hump and that small ideology that is holding you back. If you can take that and release that, you have opened yourself up to a million different possibilities of things that you never knew that you could experience. And truly, you guys, a lot of great and amazing things happen once you take that first step and you follow those little life nudges. So I hope that this week, if you're experiencing any fears surrounding your life or your career, your job, your friends, your family, something that you've wanted to start but you didn't, I hope that you're able this week to take whatever you're fearful of and change it into something positive. Start that project that you've always wanted to do. You know, record whatever it is that you wanted to do. Be the person that you've always wanted to be. if you don't start today, you'll find excuses every single day not to do it. So you have to start now. You have to start when you're feeling that push and that nudge and that purpose. So I hope this week, you guys, you really take a stride towards all of the goals that you want to achieve. And I'm wishing you the most wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope these words have brought you inspiration, insight, and a bit more happiness. Please leave a comment or a review if this episode resonates with you. I would be so grateful. Until next time, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.